After Israel beat France in the FIBA EuroBasket, it got Wizards fans thinking, should we revisit the Deni Avdija trade from draft night just a year ago? We're here to tell you there's no winner, there's no loser of that trade. It's just something that had to happen for this Wizards organization. This is Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
DC family, you're locked on to the Washington Wizards, and we thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. Special shout out to all of our everydayers that are a part of the Locked On family here. Locked On Podcast Network, it's your team every day. One of your co-hosts here, Ben Strober. I cover all things DC sports for 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980, alongside, as always, the DC Sports content creating savant. That is Abdullah Ayubi. Check him out at the DMV Sports Zone page, growing every single day. And I know you're hyped up, football season starting here. Happy Labor Day to everyone out there as well. AB, how we doing?
Love your shirt, Ben. Football season's back, meaning basketball is just around the corner. This is exciting, man.
That is right. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So as I mentioned in the intro there, Israel beat France in the EuroBasket just yesterday. And a lot of Wizards fans took notice of a certain somebody, a former Washington Wizard, Deni Avdija, who was drafted by this organization many years ago now, and obviously was traded on draft night, which became Bub Carrington in that 2024 draft class. He was the leading scorer of the game. He put up 23 points and 8 rebounds to lead Israel over France, 82-69. Bilal Coulibaly, not the best game for him with 4 points and 4 rebounds, went 1 of 4 from the field in 16 minutes. And Alex Sarr did not play due to a little calf muscle strain. Supposedly nothing serious, so hopefully we'll see some more of him throughout this tournament. But we're not even going to talk about the play of Bilal and those guys right now, because a lot of the focus has turned to Deni Avdija because of what he was able to do. He had a couple of key moments in that game where he hit a step-back three on Coulibaly. What is interesting to see, because those two are such good defenders in their own realm, their own respect. So it's interesting to see them go up against one another. And Deni Avdija, a guy that was traded away from this organization on draft night in 2024, and it left a lot of questions, because a guy that seemed like he was maybe starting to turn the corner within this franchise, would he reach his full potential here in DC? Turns out when he goes to Portland, he has a pretty good season for himself, and it leaves Wizard fans wondering with Bub Carrington right now if anyone's a winner or a loser in this trade. I'm here to say that I don't think anybody wins or loses. Because you think about where this Wizards team was just a summer ago, before the 2024 draft. Obviously, you're coming off one of your really poor seasons, the start of the tank, essentially. After you traded away Bradley Beal, you start to begin this whole rebuild. You needed to lose games because you wanted to find yourself in the top chances of receiving a high lottery pick. The Wizards end up getting 6, but they do get Trey Johnson. So, no harm, no foul there. If you have Deni Avdija on this team, somebody that was starting to ascend his game as he went into his 4th season, I think he hurts your chances of losing a lot of basketball games. I think he's a guy that actually can win you some games for what he's able to do on the floor. I know the Wizards really never used him the way he probably should have been here in DC, but it didn't really make sense for Avdija to be here long term. I think he killed what they wanted to do in terms of the rebuild. And in return, of course, Bub Carrington is a guy that, you're going to get an opportunity to see him be your starting point guard this year. They don't know what they have in that quite yet. So it's way too early, first of all, to say that the Wizards would have lost this trade or anything like that. Just because Avdija has ascended his game to, maybe a new level that we hadn't seen here in DC, I don't think that really means anything in the long run when we look back at this trade yet.
Yeah, Deni was a big guy that I was a fan of coming into the league. I remember a lot of people were comparing him. It's so easy to compare him to Luka Doncic, a white Israeli or a white European. He was from Israel, I think 6'8", 6'9". At the time, I think the development of him was hindered by Scott Brooks. We all remember Scott Brooks. I mean, he was just putting him in the corner, shooting spot-up threes. But when Deni was given the ball in his hands, he would play make. I remember, I think not too long ago when he was on the Wizards his last year, before he got traded, he had like 40-plus points against the Atlanta Hawks. I remember that. And I was excited. I thought he was going to be given the keys to DC. But then Will Dawkins is like, hey, this guy was not part of our regime. We did not draft him. Therefore, we're going to ship him out. You get Bub Carrington in return. Now, it was a little frustrating to see Deni just playing really good in Portland and us like losing. But at the end of the day, you brought up a good point. It would have hindered our chances of getting a top pick. I know we didn't get Cooper Flag this year, but maybe this year too, if we still had Deni, like if we're trying to lose games, but Denny is trying to go out there and be that number one, number two guy. I think right now in Portland, with the amount of guys that they have, he wants to be their star. So it was kind of a win-win for both parties. Bub Carrington, I think this year, Ben, we were always talking about it. We're really going to assess how he does these 82 games. Last year, Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma, the shots that are being taken. This year, Bub Carrington, if he wants to be a true point guard, he has to go out there and prove it. And mind you, last year he played all 82 games. So this season, we expect him to play all 82. Of course, obviously, as much as we love the other young players, this guy was a guy that hit a game winner of his last regular season game as a rookie. And this guy can shoot the mid-range shot, but we need to see him be more aggressive. So if you want to see a good Bub Carrington, those are the things that we need to see first. And then from there, he can complement his game with Trey Johnson, with Alex Sarr. We always talk about the fact that there's so many narratives with this team. There's so many young guys on this team. So that's something you have to look forward to. And again, I really miss Deni. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, it was a win-win for both parties.
Yeah, it seemed like such a shock when it happened on draft night, just considering Denny's fourth year in the association in 2023, put up 14.7 points per game. You saw his 2-point field goal percentage get to over 56%. He shot from 37% from the three-point line as well. So he had really a career best year after only averaging 9 the year before, 8 in his sophomore year, and just 6 his rookie year. So once they saw them kind of open the door a little bit for trying to develop his game, let him take the ball and isolate a little bit and, to avoid just sitting in the corner, as you mentioned with Scott Brooks. Didn't really have him in the role that thought you would best suit him. I think coming out of that draft, a lot of Wizards fans were super excited about Deni Avdija because they thought he was going to be an elite level shot maker, a guy that created his own shot really well. And he's kind of become that type of player for Portland. However, if you look at it from Portland's point of view, it hasn't really led to much. The team went 36-46 last year, missed out on the postseason, 2 spots back of, even making the play-in game. So Portland wasn't really able to, essentially tank or anything like that. They weren't able to find itself in a good lottery position. And Deni
That's
Avdija,
the
even though
spot, Ben, sorry to cut you off, but that's the spot that
he,
Wizards fans, we were used to it for so long. We
Mhm.
were never good enough to contend in the playoffs, but we were too good to be able to get a top pick. So that's a situation that we wanted to avoid, and so far, Will Dawkins has been doing that.
And Portland's obviously a better team on paper. They were much better last year, and the record would indicate. So I'm not trying to even say that Deni Avdija would have this team winning 30 games last season. That's not the case. I think he maybe would have helped them win a couple more games. And, depending on what the Wizards' outlook is, how they actually wanted to play down the stretch of the season, like if you had guys sitting out uh, in the fourth quarter of games down in the final stretch of the season, I think it was pretty obvious what Washington was trying to do. And with that being said, I think that's why it made sense. I know at the time it was tough to see Avdija go after really what was a career year in his fourth year in DC. But Bub Carrington, solid rookie season for him. He's got the chance now. The door's open for him to maybe take over here and solidify himself as the team's point guard. But that remains to be seen. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done for him. But that's why it's way too early for me. I don't really want to consider anybody a winner or a loser of this deal. I feel like I've seen a lot of Wizards fans that have been a bit overreactive to Deni playing really well this past season and playing well in the EuroBasket as well. I think that means nothing for what the Wizards are trying to do rebuild-wise. Deni is a guy that wasn't drafted by this regime, first of all, so you just understand that's the way it goes sometimes. You're going to have guys that are good players, and they're going to get gutted out by a new general manager that comes in. It just happens. And Deni Avdija just happened to be the, I guess you could say, beneficiary because he ended up going to a better team at the time. But we'll have to look back a couple years from now to see if these guys the Wizards have developed and if you get some better draft picks down the road because the Wizards are definitely going to be picking in the lottery again next year.
I love Wizards fans, Ben, because they see Deni drop 20 points and they're like, oh, as soon as they get on Twitter, oh, we lost a Deni trade. We shouldn't have traded Deni, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, it was, like you mentioned, he was put in a better environment. We were in a better situation to get a guy like Bub Carrington who could be that true point guard. So we'll just have to see. I don't know how, Ben, I was going to ask you, how many years would you give it to actually consider, yeah, we won or lost this trade?
I don't know if I'm ever going to declare anybody a winner or a loser of the trade, just because if you look at it from perspective of where both organizations are, keeping Deni Avdija around, and even though you could say the return, you get a first round pick. You pick somebody in the first round because you trade Deni. Like in hindsight, like that is good value for the Wizards right there. They were able to take a guy they feel like deserved to be picked in the middle of the first round, a guy that they felt like could benefit them long term here in DC. So when you look at it like that, I feel like it's a good deal for Washington. You got the opportunity to do something different, do something that's your own, and then Portland got a pretty talented level player back in return. I feel like it was a fair trade on both sides, and I think it's going to be up to what Bub Carrington does in his future to determine if they were able to capitalize on this trade. If the Wizards miss because Bub Carrington doesn't pan out the way people might see it, I don't know if you would say they lost the trade. You could just say the pick they made didn't pan out. Just be like anything. If you had a mid first round pick and you took somebody who didn't pan out in the long run, Johnny Davis, taken 10th overall, didn't pan out, then they just missed. They missed on the draft pick. I wouldn't say it's because they traded away Deni. They're big losers.
No, I definitely see what you're going from there, but a lot of NBA fans, they love playing the win or loss trade scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's anything. Anytime there's a trade, no matter what happens, the Dallas Cowboys just trade Micah Parsons. How do you think people are reacting to that? They're saying, who won? Who won the trade? Who cares? And Dallas just traded away a generational player. So you can look at it that way. I don't think the Wizards traded away a generational player in Deni Avdija. They traded away a good player. Deni is good. He's going to have a good, long career in the NBA. Is he a superstar player, though? I don't think so. I don't think he's a guy that could really take your organization to the next level. The Wizards are looking for somebody to
All-star
do
though,
that.
Ben, what do you think?
All-star? Maybe. Maybe crack the All-Star team. That'd be really good for him. And I'd be happy for him. I still root for him. I liked him when he was here personally. I think he did what he could, given the circumstances, given the situation the organization was in. It's tough to succeed in DC, especially when your first year the coach says, "Hey, go sit in the corner. Go chill out over there. If you get an open three, knock it down. But if not, you're good. Just play some defense too. That's cool." It would have been interesting to see how the Wizards utilized him in this new Dawkins regime. I guess you kind of saw part of that in the 2023 season, and he was a lot better. They were able to showcase him really well to make it so he was able to be traded on draft night, and then you were able to get Bub Carrington in the first round because of it. So I think you got to give the Wizards some credit there. They were able to develop him into a much better player than he had been in the first 3 years of his career in order to trade him to do something different. So I'd give the Wizards some credit for that.
Yeah, and rooting for Deni, it would be nice to make the All-Star team. His fan base, I mean, the Israelis were showing out for him. I remember when I used to watch Locked On Wizards before I was on, they were always hyping Deni up. So I think as long as he can pan out the way offensively, I think he's only going to get better defensively. He's given the keys in Portland. Who knows? Maybe he can go ball out there. Again, they did bring back Damian Lillard, so that's a whole different situation compared to Washington.
I'd have to go back and watch, but I think Locked On Wizards, when that trade happened, I think when B. Scott was hosting the show, I'm pretty sure he said that the Wizards might regret the move to trade Deni, but he was still really high in Bub Carrington at the time. And I feel like nothing has really changed. Like, yeah, in hindsight, if you look back at it, Deni Avdija would have been a nice player to have here. He would definitely help you win some games. But I think where you are as an organization, that's not exactly what you're looking for. You're trying to develop your own young core of talent, and Bub Carrington is hopefully part of that. So that's just the way that I look at it. We'll continue this conversation here on the other side of the break. There's no winner. There's no loser. Let's keep on breaking it down, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of our French kids in the EuroBasket when we come back on Locked On Wizards. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's their 401k, properties, or investments. And we don't have the full picture. You end up leaving money on the table. That's why Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, and get smart categorization of your spending. And finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. One thing that surprised me about Monarch Money is I was able to identify that I wasn't saving as much as I'd thought. Monarch helps you notice the inefficient investment amount allocation and discover forgotten 401ks from your past jobs. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. Continuing the conversation here about Deni Avdija trade and Bub Carrington, what the impact is. Real quick, we have an important request from you. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like and what you don't. Answer questions about our advertising. We can do that for you. Go to LockedOnPodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's LockedOnPodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out. All right, continuing this conversation here, Abdullah. Bub Carrington in year number 2. What more do you want to see from him? Obviously, the 82 game stands out. He's got the durability factor to him, a really nice mid-range shot and three-point shot as well. But when you think about it from the terms of becoming a starting point guard for this organization in the long run, what are you looking for in year number 2 here?
I think a guy who's a facilitator. Jordan Poole's gone. He was the guy that all defenses were toning in on. And I think if you're the Washington Wizards, you really haven't seen that pure point guard ever since John Wall. It is what it is. John was special. But in Bub, if he can figure out a way to be a guy who can dime the ball, it can also rebound the ball. There were games last year, but I remember he had like 7 to 8 rebounds a stretch of games. That's very impressive, considering this team is already so bottom 5 in rebounding. If you can get a guard at 6'5" that can rebound, that's great. And him needing to be that guy that can be a shot maker or shot creator, rather. Like I mentioned, JP's gone. Trey Johnson potentially could be that guy for this team. You also have Chris Middleton and CJ McCollum. But as much as I love those vets, I want to see the young guys thrive. I think Bub Carrington could be a guy that created a shot. In the Summer League, we saw that first game was really inconsistent in that first game. The second game, he hit a clutch three at the end. So I think a guy like Bub, and I want to see also if that shot's not falling, can he still make an impact on the game, whether that's offensively or defensively? The point guard is the anchor defensively. So if a guy can set the tone, I remember last year he was going at people's faces, vets going in there as a rookie. So that's the type of dog mentality that we need here in Washington. And if Bub Carrington can carry that from his rookie year to year 2, he's only going to get better.
I want to see Carrington be a guy that can get inside the arc with a little bit more ease to break down the defense. And I know the dribble moves are something that we haven't really seen a whole lot of him because he hasn't had the chance to be a ball dominant player. But one thing a really good starting point guard should do from your team is get the defender on your back hip. I think that's one thing that John Wall used to do so well
Oh
when he
my
was here.
gosh.
He'd
He
get
was
inside
so
the
good at
arc
that.
and he'd kind of just get the defender on his back hip. You create a little bit of separation for yourself. And Wall, he had such great quickness. He was able either to get to the back basket there for a layup or dish it off to somebody else. I want to see Carrington play in that sense in a way because either you're going to get to the basket and get fouled, which is something he did not do a whole lot of in his rookie year, or you're just going to get all the way there and score, or you're going to break down the defense to allow open shooters to feast on the outside. I know we've seen Koulibaly in the EuroBasket trying to work on his catch and shoot opportunities a whole lot. So that's something you really like to see. I think Keyshawn George is going to become a really good spot up shooter for this team when the situation calls for it. I mean, even last year, you have at times where Alex Sarr is spotting up for a catch and shoot 3. So if you have 5 different dudes on the floor, all that can shoot the 3, if you have the other 4 on the outside, if Carrington can break down the defense, he's a guy that is going to facilitate and make plays for others. I think that's going to be an underrated aspect of his game because we didn't see a whole lot of that in the first year, and we always saw him playing 2 summer league games. So you didn't really get a fair opportunity to see if he can do those things well. And that's going to be the biggest, focal point for him when you're looking at him under the microscope this year of if he can be this team's starting point guard, because you have to have somebody that can make plays for others. That's a non-negotiable for the point guard. I know Bub Carrington can score the basketball. I know he can shoot. Is he better suited off as a 2 guard playing off the ball? That might be the case, but this is going to be the opportunity for him here in year number 2.
How much of an impact do you think of him playing alongside CJ compared to Trey? Would there be a difference, Ben?
I'm not sure because I'm not, CJ McCollum, he's going to score the basketball for this team. He's going to do a lot of different things well. He's going to facilitate. He's just a true pro. He's a true vet, and he can do almost anything on the basketball court well. He's been that way his entire career, and I expect his role to be very similar to that, especially early on in the year, whether the Wizards are trying to showcase him for a potential trade at the deadline or not. I mean, that remains to be seen. I would imagine that might be the possibility, but he is making over $30 million this year, so it might be difficult to move off that contract. Same thing with Chris Middleton. But with him on the floor, you could learn a lot as a 2 guard, and maybe that'll take some of the weight off of Bub Carrington away. When Trey Johnson is out there, maybe he's going to be more feeling things out in a way because Trey Johnson looked really smooth with the basketball in his hands in the summer league, but it's going to be a completely different ball game when you're talking about regular season NBA competition. We might have a completely different perception on how Trey Johnson is with the basketball in his hands if he's a guy that really does create his own shot super well. I think he's going to, but I think that will, all in all impact the way Bub Carrington does play in the floor. That's actually a really good question, Abdul, because I think that's something we could watch for is how Bub plays when CJ's out there versus Trey. Is there any difference? And maybe those two work together really well. I know they've been trying to build that chemistry by shooting in the contests and practice. I know they've been trying to establish this little rivalry, who's the best shooter on the team. That's great. You love to see that kind of competition in practice because hopefully that's going to lead to some really good things on the floor. And if you can develop a really good duo in that backcourt with Trey Johnson and Bub Carrington, then you're setting yourself up really well in the draft. Maybe you can attack the center position or you could, get another wing. It seems like the Wizards are going to just keep on trying to get as many
Back in the
wings as
wing
possible.
position.
They're going to get as many wings as possible until one of them becomes a superstar player, or you could just get really anybody they feel like is going to best help the team going forward. But they're going to be looking for another guy to become a cornerstone piece in next year's draft. So if you can solidify your backcourt, that'll open the opportunity to go out there and get a really elite level 5 or even another 3. Maybe if they feel like Alex Sarr can play the 5, you find a power forward at some point. But I think like getting a really good big to pair alongside Alex Sarr and then complement the backcourt really well also.
Yeah. Again, having that backcourt, like you mentioned, will establish your foundation. So I'm hoping that Trey and Bub could be that future backcourt that we haven't had in DC in so long. And I think they can be. It's going to take some time. The development of him, of Trey, with alongside CJ McCollum, the idea of maximizing his trade value, but also making sure they're not hindering Trey Johnson's rookie year development. A lot of things, a lot of narratives that we're always talking about, and we just have to stay tuned and watch these 82 games.
That is exactly right, my friend. Why do we think Bub Carrington can perform under the pressure that's on him this year? We will tell you that next. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I like to bet. Player props, building same-game parlays, or even jumping in live action. It unfolds right in front of me, and everything is right there for me on FanDuel. It makes every game more exciting. Whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup, it's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. Are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. One more segment to go here on Locked On Wizards. All the pressure in the world, it seems like, on Bub Carrington. I think one point we could probably make an argument for who has the most pressure on this team in the upcoming season. I think Bilal Coulibaly obviously stands out. We've done a video on that. Bub Carrington, it pertains to them as well. And it seems tough to even really say to put so much pressure on a young kid just entering his second year. Bub Carrington, only 20 years old, and you're already having these conversations whether or not long term it's going to work out with him. But it's a little bit easy to get ahead of yourselves in terms of these conversations. I know there are some Wizards fans that think Bub will be the truth here, and there's some that think that he's not going to work out long term and he's more destined to play off the bench for this team. Whether or not that is actually the case, it's way too early to tell, and he needs his fair opportunity to play. I think Bub will play well under this pressure that's been instilled to himself because he knows the situation that he's in. He can tell what's going on. Like, obviously, he's been given this opportunity, but he knows where this organization is. I'm sure they are told from within the organization, Dawkins, Keefe, Travis Schlenk, and the head coach Brian Keefe as well, that when you're on the Wizards right now, where the current state of the franchise, everyone is under evaluation. Everyone is trying to find out where they fit in terms of this rebuild, because the one thing that makes the most sense from a rebuild, what you want to see in a season, is you find out who needs to be here long term and who necessarily doesn't. Every player that's playing within this organization knows that, even guys that have been brought in via the draft and guys in the trade market as well. Cam Whitmore, this feels like a second chance for him because he didn't fit in Houston. That's a team in a win now window, and although Whitmore is a talented player, he didn't fit into their timeline to try to go win an NBA title. And if Whitmore has that in that notion in his head, he's playing with a chip on his shoulder. I think Bub Carrington's going to play with a chip on his shoulder. He's got that Baltimore background, the toughness, the grit that comes with him. Already been through one of the toughest mental parts of his life that happened last year. He was able to play through that, and even just playing within an organization that is constantly losing, you feel like the pressure will mount on you because almost you feel like you're being tasked with taking the franchise out of the mud. And I know it falls on everyone in the organization, not just the players. It falls on the coaches, falls on the front office. But if you're Bub Carrington, you got that added pressure because this is an organization that picked you because they had belief in you, that you could become the kind of player they envisioned. And with that being said, I feel like Bub Carrington will go out there and show everybody why, he has an opportunity that he's been given here, why he was taken in the middle of the first round, despite being a lot more raw than maybe some of the other prospects. We saw a lot from him in year number 1, and I know he's been working hard to put in the extra effort here in year number 2. And I think defensively will also set him apart. He's going to have a new effort, new mentality to him.
Everyone's talking about Darren Peterson, Ben, in his upcoming draft class. Got the kid, the point guard at Kansas. He's talented, but I still want be more Bub. This kid is a dog. I've been saying it for a while. It's crazy to think about at one point I was saying to myself, he could be the best out of the three of Keyshawn, Alex Sarr, and Bub Carrington. Every game that goes by this upcoming year, we're always going to change that narrative. But Bub is so freaking talented, like we mentioned. And you mentioned how much confidence the organization has for him. Deni Avdija, a guy that we talked about earlier on this episode, they had people were saying this kid should be given the keys to the city in DC. But hey, let's go trade him and we'll get Bub Carrington in return, a future point guard here in Washington. And I love Darren Pearson. I think he's going to do great things in the NBA, but I want Bub Carrington to be this point guard of this team for the future. And I think he can be. You just got to give it some time. The kid's 20 years old. He's so freaking young. Year two, a lot of narratives going to be pushed on him, but I think he's going to go out there and ball out. And again, the number one thing that I love about sports, or number one thing that I look at when it comes to evaluating players, availability. 82 games, Ben. Veterans out there that's been 10 plus years can't even play 15, 20 games in the NBA season without taking breaks and whatnot. So shout out Bub. He's a dog.
Yeah. So I remember in the episode we did last week, I said my gut was telling me that I feel like this team picks a point guard in next year's draft with a high pick. And I haven't necessarily changed my mind on that, but I will come back slightly on that statement into saying that I really want this to work out for Bub Carrington because I like him a lot, because I see a lot of potential in him. Will the Wizards have a shorter leash on him? I'm not exactly sure. I think it's going to depend on where they feel like they're in their timeline, because this is the last year where you really get to pull the card and say we're losing a lot of games because we need to for our lottery implications. I don't think that's going to be the case next year. I feel like they're going to have to be tasked to go out there and at least try to compete on a night in, night out basis. It's not going to be the situation where you're essentially rooting for them to lose while they're developing. That'll be the case for a lot of it this year. But after this year's over and you don't have to worry about keeping your own lottery pick at this point, there's going to be higher expectations for the team. And if Carrington doesn't show them enough, maybe they do go in another direction. But I do want it to work out with Carrington because I think he's a super talented player. And maybe having some extra talent like Trey Johnson alongside him, if Coulibaly can break out as well, if Alex Sarr has a bigger jump offensively, that just might help out Carrington enough maybe to showcase why he can be a point guard of this team for the next, 5 to 6 years.
Do you think outside of Trey Johnson, Ben, Bub Carrington should be the one when it comes to young guys taking the most shots on this team?
The most shots? Well, I'd like to see him play make a little bit more, so maybe not necessarily. I think I'd like to see Trey Johnson, obviously, take the majority of the shots because you want to be your scorer. And I want to see Keyshawn George get up a lot of shots as well because if you have him come into his own as a scorer, a guy that comes off the wing, ideally, you'd want that guy to be scoring at all three levels really well. I'm not sure if Bub will be a guy that scores consistently at all three levels because we've yet to see him really get 2 feet in the paint and go in and score the ball consistently at that. But if he develops a game where he can get to the rim and finish or make plays for others, then that would be an ideal scenario for this Wizards team offensively.
I think last year his career high was like 34 against Orlando, and he was stroking it from three. So I can't wait to see what he build on from year one going into year two.
Absolutely. All right, that'll do it for us on Locked On Wizards today, revisiting the Bub Carrington, Deni Avdija trade. Nobody's a winner. Nobody's a loser. I think each organization had its own reasons for making that exact move, and we'll have to revisit this once again a couple of years from now if Bub Carrington truly does pan out and become this team's starting point guard of the future. We think he has the tools to do it. It's all on him to play with this mounted pressure that's added on him.
One thing, Ben, sorry, I don't know if you saw on Twitter, I posted it on our page. Did you see that kid? This is off topic from the Wizards, but that guy that went up to Nico Harrison, like in the restaurant. And
yeah, that was nuts.
Dude, that was
nuts.
Dude, can you imagine if Cowboys fans, I know Jerry Jones would never go out in public, but just imagine what would happen. Dude.
So I guess here we'll keep it going for another minute so I can tell the story, I guess, at the end of the episode. So one of my really, really good buddies, massive DC sports fan, he's a avid watcher of Locked On Wizards. So shout out to you out there. You know who you are. He, in New Orleans at a Redskins game many years ago, saw Bruce Allen out at like the bar before the game. And he went up to Bruce Allen and told him he thought he was the worst GM ever and he should be fired. He said some explicit words in there that I'm not going to repeat on here, but he really did that. So that's kind of similar to what we just saw in the Nico Harrison video there. But we're keeping it on the basketball content while we can. That was a crazy video there. We thank you for making Locked On Wizard your first listen every single day. To all of you everydayers out there, we appreciate you. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast where there's no off season. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. We're getting close. NBA season just around the corner. Wizards Nation, UC family, stick with us. Locked On Wizards, we're out.